One of the greatest spiritual teachers, one of the greatest teachers of consciousness, Ramana Maharshi, and many other teachers have made the same kind of statement, that the greatest experience you can have in this life is your absence. Why? Because what you take yourself to be doesn't exist, and it's in the way of what you really are. And as long as that's the way you're living your life, as long as you're identifying yourself that way, right, you're living a ghost life. That's why the Buddhists say that people are ghosts, because they don't exist, and they're hungry. They're, hungry ghosts. They don't exist, and they're never satisfied. This is the typical experience that human beings are having, that they take themselves to be something that's nothing other than a psychological experience, okay? And it's never satisfied. No matter what it gets, it will always be looking for the next thing, right? Why? Because it's seeking happiness, isn't it? It's seeking well-being and happiness. That's why it's never satisfied, and it's always looking for the next thing. Okay, it's my birthday today, so I can celebrate my birthday today, but what about tomorrow? So this is why human beings are in a look forward mode all the time. Look forward to the weekend, look forward to Christmas, look forward to my birthday, look forward to this, look forward to that, right? Because the present moment isn't satisfying. The present moment is not sufficient. There's something missing all the time, right? So we have this ongoing hunger, this ongoing sense of dissatisfaction, this ongoing ontological sense that something is missing or something's wrong. And so we wake up in the morning, and our experience of waking up in the morning every day is the same. We're concerned, aren't we? Every day we wake up concerned. What are we concerned about? Well, we're concerned about what's going to happen today, right? Yeah. But it's not just what's going to happen today. We're concerned about what's going to happen today to me. That's what we're concerned about, right? And that's why, unless you can allow yourself to get free from this identity that you take yourself to be, right, you're stuck. You're stuck. Unless you can get free from that. And the only way you're going to get free from that is allow yourself to take a view of your existence, not from identifying either with life or death, but from identifying above that, transcending that, looking at both life and death as part of a natural process of appearing in this world and experiencing a human life. That's why when people get death, get the diagnosis, this has been recorded many, many times. When people get a terminal diagnosis and then they find out they're not going to die, they very typically say, I was much happier when I thought I was going to die. Because when I thought I was going to die, I could let go of all my expectations. I could let go of all of the things, this whole process I was experiencing all the time, and just enjoy the time that I have left. That's a surrendering, right? You're surrendering, right? And then they find out they're going to live, and once they find out they're going to live, then the personality kicks in and they start experiencing the same old shit again, right? So I highly recommend thinking about your death, getting clear about your death, getting clear that the only real death is the death of the body and the personality. Now that's not necessarily going to make much of a difference because you believe that you are the body and the personality, even if you think you don't, you do. You don't get out of that easy. That's why practice is so important. You have to practice, continually practicing consistently, daily, every day, and then during the day, as much as possible, practicing what? Practicing the absence of the person. Practicing the absence of the person, that who I think I am is never really here. And if I'm clear about that, and I'm clear that who I think I am, it only occurs to me as a thought process. If I'm clear about that, and I'm practicing paying attention in such a way where I don't follow the thinking activity as the truth, and I have come across the teachings that tell me that the truth is an experience that I'm having. It's not something I'm thinking about. It's an experience I'm having. And the experience that I'm having of the truth is non-conceptual, so there's nothing I can say about it, right? And I don't have to say anything about it if I'm aware of my experience of it, because the experience of it is the real thing, not what I think about it. That's what's called well-being. The experience of who you actually are, which is non-conceptual, which can't be spoken about, but it's happening all the time. It's never not happening. It's always available. And the experience of that is available when you're paying attention in such a way that you're aware that when the mind's playing what it plays, it's playing an identity that is not real. And when you're aware of that, all right, and the way you're paying attention is you're aware that that's not real and that's not what I am, then you're experiencing what you are. You can't experience what you are because you're already experiencing it, right? So that's there, right? So what you're doing is you're trying to get your attention off of what's not real in order to experience what is real. And for most people, their attention is being taken 100% by what's not real. In other words, they have been trained since they were a child to pay attention to what you're thinking, which is not true right there. You're not thinking anything. Thinking is happening, and you just believe they're your thoughts. That's called neurosis. Your conditioning can be modified. Yeah, sure. That's why I say that the proof of the pudding, the proof that you're experiencing enlightenment is behavioral, which means that you have to train. That's what training the mind is all about. You're training your mind to stop believing, you're training your mind to stop producing the illusion that you're something that you're not.
But you're not identifying with that, right? But I'm saying this, your condition, the voice in your head, doesn't that always stay the same?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure. But sometimes the voice in your head gets it right. That's why you're paying attention, because you don't want to dismiss the whole thing. If you dismiss the whole thing, you'll walk in front of a car, right? Yeah, so paying attention, that's what the middle way is all about. You're not identifying any longer with the thought activity. You've learned about the truth, right? You've learned about the truth, right? The truth is I'm not this body. The truth is I'm not this personality, right? So I've learned about the truth. Now the application of what I learned is to pay attention to what my mind's producing all the time so I can see where the mistakes are. And when I see where the mistakes are, I don't follow that. And if I don't follow that, what's left for me to experience and express is my true nature, which means I will be generous, I will be kind, I will be caring, I will be loving, right? Because I will understand that the truth is I am you, I am everybody, and that's not just a theoretical idea, and that's just not a belief, that's actual. I am actually, see, that's the thing. If you want to know how to treat people the way you want to be treated, right? If you want to treat your neighbor as yourself, the only way you're going to be able to do that successfully is to understand your neighbor really is you. You understand? If you just take it on like a good idea, it won't work because you're still considering your neighbor not to be you, right? But I'm going to practice loving my neighbor as I'm going to practice that, but I don't really believe my neighbor is me, right? Well, then soon as that person acts in a way that causes you to feel threatened, that's out the window, right? So it won't work. Okay, so here's what I want to share with you today that I got from this conversation. I was listening to an astrophysicist, a Zen master, and a psychiatrist talk. And they were talking about free will. And they were saying the things that I've always heard about free will, that it's a conundrum, it's confusing. In the absolute sense, it's not true that free will exists, but then that's very confusing to people, and people don't want to give up the idea that they can actually make choices and make decisions and so forth and so on. It doesn't feel good. For most people, it doesn't seem right or feel good, the idea that you have no choice about anything, that everything is going to happen and you just have to accept that, and that's all there is, right? So I was looking at that, I was listening to them talking, I was looking at that, and I realized, oh, wait a minute. Maybe what we mean by what free will is really all about is to be free from my personality's will. Maybe that's what free will is, because my personality's will is not free. Personality's will is totally a function of my conditioning and my DNA, isn't it? Every thought you have is coming from the database of your conditioning, right? So it's not creative. You're not creating thinking from nothing. You're creating thinking from something. And the something you're creating your thinking from, or the something that thinking gets created from, is your conditioning. If I ask you a question, you'll answer me according to your condition. If I ask somebody else a question, they'll answer according to their conditioning. And they don't have to be the same answer because it's based on the conditioning, right? But what if what free will means really is that when I give up my free will, which is not free because of my conditioning, and accept thy will be done, then my will is free. Can you get this? Then my will is free. Then my will is free because the will, whether you call it thy will be done or whether you call it the cosmic law, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. If that will and my will are the same thing, then don't I have free will? My will is free from being limited by using my personality to make choices and decisions. That's where the free will doesn't exist, right? But if my will is free, it means it's not limited to the limited reality that I would be using to make decisions and choices, right? That I give that up and I accept that thy will be done, right? Now, what's thy will be done mean? It means that everything that's happening is what's supposed to be happening. And if everything is happening is what's supposed to be happening, right, then what you're practicing is being related to that instead of thinking it should be different. Because thinking it should be different is what's causing your suffering, isn't it? Yeah. So if you let that go and you accept thy will be done, if you accept the cosmic law is what's causing everything, then your will is free. Your will is free because you've been free to give it to the real source of it. That's a whole different way of looking at it. And if you can really get what I'm saying, it really does allow you to relax and accept the idea that you don't have free will, but there is free will beyond you. And that free will is the will of God. It's predetermined and according to the cosmic law or thy will of God, the will of God. It's predetermined according to that. And of course that makes sense because God knows everything. God knows everything and God's unlimited. I could take it even further and say, and you are God, but I'll let you hold on to that, right? But the unlimited version of you has an infinite knowledge. Right? It's open intelligence. That's what Candace O'Denver calls it, open intelligence, right? Meaning it has no limit to it. So why wouldn't I give my will to that? It's unlimited intelligence.
So there's infinite possibilities in predetermination, right?
Of course. Yeah, there's infinite possibilities. You're in much better shape to have that be your will than to think your little pea-shooter brain will is going to be useful. Most of the decisions you make will be stupid. They will be. They have to be because you're using a very, very, very tiny little database to make those decisions. But if you let go of that limitation and you allow yourself to accept the idea that there is a source from which these things happen, and I will allow that to be the case instead of thinking that I know what's going on. And by allowing that to happen and paying attention to how things happen, I might learn something. I might begin to understand wisdom instead of thinking that the answer to everything is just to figure it out, like that. Yeah.
But just keeping with what we were just talking about, it's still predetermination.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. It's predetermination, but not in the sense that it's not that it's predetermination in the sense that everything that could possibly exist does exist. That the real understanding of time is everything that could happen exists already. This is the true understanding of reality. Everything that could exist does exist, right? And free will is allowing that to be the case in terms of that's the source from which things happen. It makes perfect sense. The personality doesn't like it because the personality wants to exist. The personality wants to be real, wants to survive. So in order to survive, it has to try and use the idea that I can do things, doership. The personality considers doership to be very important, right? I can do things. Yeah. But if you let go of that, you're still doing things, right? But you're not the source of what you're doing anymore. God is. And if God is the source of what you're doing and you let go of the personality and let yourself identify yourself with the consciousness, which is God, then you'll start behaving consistent with the truth. That's the goal, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you behave consistent with the truth, what does that mean? It means that you will be practicing the middle way. What is the middle way? The middle way means I am no longer a one-trick pony. I am no longer just paying attention to my mental activity that's telling me how I feel and what I think and what to do, because I know that's corrupt. I know that's corrupt, right? I know that's based on a survival design, right? And the most important thing about that design is that I survive, not that I'm happy. Doesn't matter whether I'm happy, right? And this is why it doesn't work, right? But when you let that go and you open yourself up, to infinity, when you open yourself up to the reality of what you actually are as consciousness or awareness itself, right? That's a much better choice. That's a much better choice, because then you're allowing yourself to accept that the way things happen is coming from the reality that is the totality of what exists. And from that reality that's the totality of what exists comes what I think and what I do, instead of just what happened to me in my past experience, and that's determining my behavior. It's a let go is what it is. It's a let go. Predetermination simply means that everything that exists already exists, and from that reality that's non-dual, you're not separate from it, you are it. See, there's no problem with things being determined from that standpoint, because while they may be determined, right, the determination of them is a function of everything that could possibly happen boiling down to what's happening at this particular time.
I think it's a language thing.
In a way, it's a language thing. One of the reasons that quantum physics gets closer to this, right, is because in quantum physics, they get to the non-conceptual understanding. They were talking about that, these three guys were talking about the quantum physics, and the astrophysicist said that if you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics, because it's not comprehensible. It can only be proven in mathematical systems, but it can't be conceptually understood. It's impossible to conceptually understand it. So there comes a time when you just have to let go. Our pea-shooter brain cannot understand too much. It's very, very limited, right? So if you just trust the truth and live consistent with it and it works, what's the problem? Right? That's the reality of it. So this business of the middle way is how you apply the truth. How you apply the truth. I'm gonna when I upload this video, I'm gonna put in the comments a link to a PDF book that I downloaded by Nitsujimi Roshi, the Zen master, right? And I loved it. It's a very brief book. It's a very brief PDF book, right? But the reason I love it is because in this book he talks about the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and he explains from a Buddhist point of view how working with balancing that system is totally consistent with Zen practice. Totally consistent. And he goes into a lot of detail, and he actually has charts about, what it's like when you're in the sympathetic aspect, and you're in survival mode, how that's affecting your body, your heart, your lungs, your muscles, and your nervous system. So this is important stuff.
It goes into the physiology of what actually happens in the body.
Yeah, looking at the physiology in terms of the nervous system is acting out your identity. It's acting out your identity, right? So it's a way of working from the nervous system back. Getting the nervous system to calm down allows you to see things differently and experience the difference between your survival identity and your actual self, the awareness itself. So the idea of the middle way is that prior to ever hearing about any of these practices or teachings, right, you and your mind were the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You and your mind were the same thing. There was nothing else but that. Right? That's how people get into all kinds of trouble, because you believe your thoughts are the truth, just like everybody else does, and that means you're going to have conflict, okay? So when you learn the truth, when you start to come in contact with the truth, you come to realize that, wait a minute, now I understand why my life has been such a disaster, because I've been living it only by believing my thoughts and feelings and what they were telling me to do. And when I did them, a lot of times I suffered from my own behavior. I suffer from my own emotions. I suffer from my own actions, right? So this is very disturbing and confusing, and it leads me to feel like I'm the problem, right? And then if I keep trying to fix that and it doesn't work, I get so frustrated I just want to, leave. Suicide, right? So when you realize that this is not a good idea to identify yourself with, and it's not a good idea to just blindly follow this, that's a fool's life, right? Once you realize that, then you have the opportunity to understand the truth in as much detail as you can, because you want to apply this truth. This truth is what will set you free. This truth is what will allow you to experience well-being. So you want to apply it. If you don't apply it, it'll just remain as a belief that you have or something that you're thinking about, but it won't make any difference, right? So the application of it means in real time, moment to moment, you have to be awake. What's that mean? It means you have to be aware of the mental activity, you have to be aware of your emotions, you have to be aware of the thoughts, you have to be aware of the physical sensations, and you have to be aware of the fact that this is coming from a system designed for survival, not for well-being or happiness. So the middle way means that I will take the position of being between that programming and the way things really are. And I will use the way things really are as a reference to look at what this is telling me. And if this is not consistent with the way things really are, I will lose interest in it, and I won't follow it, and I won't act it out, and I won't speak from there. That's the practice right there. That's the practice right there. Because if you practice that, right, you will be gradually retraining your mind, right, to take who you are to be different than you had it before. You'll be retraining your mind. That's what the 8 verses of training the mind are. The 8 verses of training the mind, right? You're training your mind to understand what you really are. You're training your mind to have a database reference that is related to the truth instead of related to what you believe or what somebody told you. That's not going to work. If you love others the way you love yourself, if you understand that the reality is that others literally are you, that's not just an idea, they literally are you. And if you don't understand that, then get involved with that. Do an inquiry in that. Do some work to understand how true that is. If you really do the work to see how true that is, the way you'll know that you see how true that is that you will start behaving toward every other human being with kindness and generosity and empathy and compassion. And the fact that you don't do that now is a function of who you take yourself to be that's still operating you. It's still operating your mouth, and it's still operating your behavior. And you can see the evidence for that. Anytime you're in conflict with any other person, that's the evidence for that. Yeah? Because if you're awake and you're intelligent, you practice the 8 verses of training the mind. You practice taking advantage of the opportunity to give away your personship, to give away the idea that you're a personality. That's what you're doing when you let the other one win. You're giving away your personality. You're saying, it's not relevant. I don't need to survive. I know myself to be that which doesn't need to survive. And if that's the case, I don't have to protect myself from anybody. I don't have to attack anybody that I think is endangering me. I can just relax. And when you experience yourself that way and you express yourself that way around other people, right, they can tell. They can tell that you're relaxed. They can tell that you're not threatening. They can feel safe around you, right? And then there isn't any conflict. There just isn't any conflict anymore. It's a practice. It's a practice. And let me tell you something. If you think that you've accomplished something in terms of how awake you are, and you can just count on that, you're mistaken. Your awakeness has to be practiced moment to moment. Because any moment that you're not awake and seeing things as they are, the automatic reality will play. Any moment that you're not awake and aware of your true nature, any moment that you're not awake and aware of what's going on in your mental state, right, the automatic material will play and will run. So and every time that happens and you find yourself suffering, you find yourself unhappy, you find yourself worrying, you find yourself angry, you find yourself fearful, all those experiences are experiences that are trying to give you feedback about where you are. So anytime you feel fearful, anytime you feel afraid, that's evidence, right, that you're sleeping. That's evidence that you're sleeping. So all you have to do, that's why I love the practice of resting as awareness for brief moments. Because you can use that. Whenever you feel fear, rest as awareness for a brief moment. Whenever you're angry, rest as awareness for a brief moment. Whenever you're confused, rest as awareness for a brief moment. Just keep coming back to your true nature over and over again. And you have to practice it moment to moment. As soon as you stop practicing it, the mind will come in and start running the programming. Yeah? And that's when you hear people complain, oh, I've been meditating and I've been studying the truth, but I'm still crazy. What's wrong? That's not good enough. You've got to practice every single moment. And that practice is a very challenging thing to do, isn't it? Yeah. As soon as you miss paying attention for a few moments, you're off to the races.